Hi, I'm Thomas Broadhead. I am the editor of the Critical Performance edition of the Ives Fourth Symphony. In this video, I'd like to relate two anecdotes about descriptions that were given by conductors of the work to their orchestras before the first rehearsal, and how different those descriptions were and how funny they are in comparison to each other because of the contrast. So the first anecdote is from a read-through of the initial state of the parts that was provided on April 26th of 2010. Now, this was not the actual premiere of the work. The premiere was on August 26th of 2012 in Lucerne, Switzerland, with Peter Etfish conducting this wonderful graduate-level orchestra as part of the Lucerne Festival. But 2 years prior to that, there was an opportunity to have the existing state of the parts read through by an ad hoc orchestra at New England Conservatory, with Gunther Schuller conducting along with Jim Sinclair. And I had recently finished the first draft of the parts, and so this seemed like an excellent opportunity. So the publisher got on board, everyone got on board, and it happened. And it so happened on April 26th of 2010, which was the 45th anniversary to the date of the premiere of the Ives Fourth. The premiere was on April 26th of 1965 under Leopold Stokowski. So 45 years later to the date, the new edition is getting its parts read through by a student orchestra in Boston. And Schuller and Sinclair were supposed to share time on the podium, and there was about 3 hours of rehearsal time, I think we had all together. And as it worked out, Schuller consumed most of the time. He took up about like 3/4 of the time that we had allotted, and he only rehearsed the second movement. And then with the remaining time, Jim Sinclair ran through the first, third, and fourth movements just to make sure that, there were no missing measures and that kind of thing. But Schuller began by lecturing the orchestra for about a half hour about the piece. And he began by saying that this was the most difficult work that had ever been written in the history of music. No work was more difficult. And what they were about to endeavor to do was, monumental. And he went on like that for a bit. It's like, okay, well, fair enough. It's a really difficult piece. It's true, right? Okay. Fast forward 3 years, and it's April of 2013. I'm in Detroit to observe the Detroit Symphony under Leonard Slatkin rehearsing the Ives Fourth. And they're doing it in the context of a complete Ives Symphony cycle that they were doing locally in Detroit that month. But then they were going to do all 4 Ives Symphonies on a marathon concert in Carnegie Hall a month later. And so all these Ives Symphonies were in the ears and the fingers and the mouths and the minds of the players. So Slatkin began his rehearsal of the Ives Fourth by saying, okay, this is really the easiest of the Ives symphonies. Even the first has more tricky to do than this one. What you have to figure out is where things fit and where things come in and which conductor to follow and all that. And once you've got that sorted out, it kind of plays itself. And I couldn't believe the contrast between what he had said and what Schuller had said just 3 years prior. This has just stuck with me to the day. So where's the truth? Well, it's somewhere in between the two claims. The Ives Fourth is extremely difficult to do. But I think it is difficult precisely because of what Slatkin was saying to his players. It's figuring out how all these parts fit together and make the whole. Which conductor do you follow, and how do you execute this passage where you're not, when you're playing by yourself and you're not supposed to synchronize with anyone else, and all that stuff. And once you've sorted all that out, then it all comes together and it works. So, and then there are parts that are quite difficult. The solo piano part is fiendishly difficult. The orchestral piano part is also fiendishly difficult. So there are individual parts that are tricky, but on the whole, what the players are having to do is not especially difficult. It's figuring out when to come in and how to play things off by an eighth and so on. And once you've sorted that out, it does play quite easily. So I wanted to relate this little story, these two different descriptions of the piece, because it's very funny to me, and also it does raise a question about the difficulty of the work itself and what makes it so difficult.